So when the war's on, we loading up the 3-pounder. Pop, pop, follow your shot like rebounders. Poppy, I gotta see that poppy eye 2-door. Knee touch, 2 whores, lay back with 2 whores. For sure, you know the chicks be all over me. I remember days when they used to cold shoulder me. Everything my whole head told me, took it to heart. What I learned on the street, dog, I took to the chart. Get your man wrapped in sheets and took to the park. Shine bright under lights, but be shook in the dark. Keep my name out your mouth, cause I don't know ya. You wanna rock me? Cause my chain be rocking like Balboa. Check the time on it to sock, hitting some doja. Spade the best things is locks and J Hope. But when they get a day older, shut your face. I put a crew in a coma and rush your safe. Your grind is going slow cause you cut your face. Small time Lucivino wouldn't touch your case. Now all the little chickens got a crush on Ace. I crush them and crush linen. Salmon will crush lemons. Cribs in the whips be plush, have them grinning. I stack in some alright cap, have them bending. Hit the top sides with a brush, have them swimming. Bird like Thanksgiving, moving to make a living.
Drop, say scoop, spade in the Dutch.
What?
Full clip AK, spray when I want. Oakwood shell, tan in the gut. Sitting on 20s, goddamn what it sluts. 5 in the waist, B-sides in the cup. In search of the balls of the Dutch. Optional baller, whip what he want. Put the range up, safe for the month. Chickens love when I'm down, haters hate when I'm up. Wanna see me duct tape thrown in the trunk. Don't see me presidential ice full of chumps. 9-9 now, the spade in the Dutch. Rolling out, greasy road, ranging it up. Killing these cats, entertainment. What?
Feel what? Come through hard so y'all hear me. Turn back, never. Rap vendetta. Each letter, clever. For that cheddar. Falling cold weather. Mink on the sweater. Don't speak to Heather. Only fly ladies. Certified angels. Rest got to pay me. Chuck this shady. Cats try to play me. Wagon Mercedes. Benz for the ladies. Need that, so he that. Where the keys at? Ride through, slide through for feedback. Like, damn, she ballin'. Damn, she that chick. Damn, she cold. Damn, she got hits. Damn, she mad cool. Damn, she be chillin'. Damn, mad jewels. Damn, she be spillin'. Trust me, we gon' all ball lovely. The pop bubbly. I'ma make y'all love me.
Yo,
what?
Yo.
What?
They catchin' feelings. They see me the coop with no ceiling. Going around gangster thugs and no villains. We condone killing like F the law. And if you ain't about this cash, I ain't messing with y'all. And if you chumps got guns, go ahead, bust them off. And the jewels be rocky while they crushing y'all. Chain froze like ice capades and Cadillac Escalades. Touch the spade, holler back. You find me where the dollars at. They mention me in Memphis, Tennessee. 10 bottles of Hennessy. You wanna see the spade locked down? Penitentiary? Nah, see the spade top down. 5 century. No, I ain't the best, but I can be potentially. No, I ain't rich, but I will be eventually. Basketball coaches had plans on benching me. Quit that. Soda hush. I got to spit that. Don't make me send my man Dutch sniffing where your bricks at. And let her run down where you fools say your nicks at. Your stuff get back. They know ace stank butter. 36 sounds straight, watch the thing bounce like clever. Team, we handle mad rock, the chicks lovers. Pirelli tires like bad cocks, they burn rubbers. What? Rubbers. Burn rubbers. Burn rubbers. Now keep it right, dog. I'm in the 3. Now, dog, don't get me wrong. Add another 3. Money is the reason these chicks is loving me. Love is the reason these chumps is ducking me. Arms what you lose, you think about touching me. What is it, the jewels that's making you look at me? What is gonna take for these hating dogs to see? I ain't gonna stop cause you players is hating me. It's 9-9 now, these numbers is playing me. Don't smile, that's how you get a cat through your teeth. Chick talking about Dutch, what you want from me? What? Nothing, baby girl, what you want from me?
What? Yeah. Let me catch that. It's like this. Your whole search for players with whips. Why them players with whips look for me? A chick with chips. Look good, plus don't play fit. That same chick will see up in the booth and be like, get the hell out of here. She can take me when the club closes. It's a 42. That's from Baltimore for two. And like 5 black, got 5 fat cats in my back. And 2 thugs that constantly in the hood with stacks. Now they notice. That's why these club hoes want to blow this. So I play the house. Play the hoes by not coming out. Unless they see me, the more on TV, that's sweet. I just talk on the phone in the back of the plane seat. So the stewards close the curtains. It's cold, coach. I'm already cold enough with this ice on my throat. It's like this. When I drop out, chicks bite my If you think about it technically, you drinking my spit.
We roll cheese out, Ben's keys out, whip the ease out. Keep the wrist froze when it's 90 degrees out. Walk up, pull my heat out, start a squeeze out. Feel the wind through the linen that spin when it's a breeze out. Throw my enemies out, line them all up. We spinning them small bills while y'all grinding them up. It comes down to what you do this half bait. Y'all knew that I was great when y'all heard the last tape. Go ahead, draw your aim, you can't even flash straight. Pretty thought style like I'm Billy Fastgate. We stack mad pics while y'all sit back and hate. Sometime in 98 was gonna drop me a plate. But till then I just chill and show love with my men. We seeing thousands and I was about ready to and no talent. Claim you ball in the game, I think you valid. Rip all the hush while you browsing. Shut your mouth and don't be messing with us. AC is up plush while y'all making a buzz. You must be messing with us. We get the money in front. While these rappers record sales on the front, we take something.
Want something, huh? Say something, huh? Man, don't you man what? Got your man what? What you feel, dog? What you feel, dog? Now here I come, right, nigga. I make a vow to myself to never be broke no more. Too many haters in the world, I can't cope no more. Drought time, what's that? Ain't no coke no more. Money in my thumbs, nigga, I broke you for. Women that don't know me, that's the I choke you for. My dick is feelings, but these chickens don't just fall. Five pants, they be like, that ain't Dutchy car. Looking at his home like, damn, Dutchy draw. Why they gotta shine like that? Why that high yellow nigga gotta rhyme like that? Cause he hot, tried and tried before, just couldn't stop. Why you pulling out money, you ain't gon' cop. Why you pulling out guns, you ain't gon' pop. You got a six, but your six ain't a drop. You got a chick, but your chick ain't a
Peace, family. I just had to listen to some of that old school. I had to take it back 20 years ago, man. Them old school freestyles, man. When they used to freestyle over them beats that was popping at the time. King Sirs know what I'm talking about. That's back when dudes used to just freestyle off the top. It wasn't none of that spoken word that you see now, man. Dudes just go in the booth and just spit. I mean, Chip know about that too. Yeah, I mean, them type of days is over with. You there, Richie?
Yeah, brother, I'm here. Peace to the family in the chat. Everybody joining us. Yeah, it's been a while, but we're gonna go in a little bit today. Hopefully, some other people join us. Yeah. Big up to all the usuals.
Yeah. I'm waiting on some other people to come in. Yeah, man. We're gonna cover. I'm gonna stay on this thing, man. With this molestation in the Black community and that silent cry in the dark room that don't nobody want to talk about. What's that? A month and a half ago, I interviewed the guy that came onto the channel, and we went in. I got some flack for that. For interviewing the guy. The guy's a homosexual, but he came on and he told his story. But there's a lot of people in the Black community that may not even be homosexuals, but they've been touched. And what a lot of us don't know, that molestation amongst Black boys is also linked to violence. It's linked to PTSD, post-traumatic trauma, stress disorder, trauma that's never been dealt with. And when it's happening to Black boys, it's something in the community it's just not talked about. Like, a lot of times you see young ladies now coming out saying that they were touched. They were touched by their mom boyfriends. They was touched by their uncles. They were, these things happen to them, and you see it, but very rare do you see Black boys coming out. Peace out, Fi. Very rare do you see Black boys coming out saying what happens to them. But you know what I noticed, Richie? A lot of these Black boys that's been molested, it plays out in their behavior. It plays out in some of either the violent behavior, or it plays out in their what we want to call it, sexual. Guys, a lot of times guys, when they mess around, they just mess around with a lot of women, trying to fulfill a desired sexual appetite or satisfaction, satisfy themselves. That's just not going to happen. It's linked to so many different things. When you see a lot of men jumping from women's bed to bed, I'm not saying that that's the reason why men may be molested, but that's one of the symptoms.
No, definitely. When you have a lower self-esteem for various reasons of abuse, it's going to play out in the way you date, the way you court, the way you mingle with the opposite sex. We've seen that enough play out with the R. Kelly incident. Again, you heard him talk about the abuse that he suffered from his sister. So straight away, when you're seeing him play out a particular role with these young girls, you can already imagine that he is fulfilling some sort of power trip or whatever that is stemming back to that abuse. So it's all connected. Right. Nobody does something for no reason.
And then we have a tendency to have this thought process that boys are only molested by other boys or men. We think that that a 25-year-old sucking on a 13-year-old or having sex with a 13-year-old is like a badge of honor. A lot of times you'll hear guys say, yeah, my son, my son got it in with this woman and whatnot. But that's trauma. That's trauma because that child is experiencing something his mind is not yet ready to deal. He's not equipped to be ready to deal with that kind of responsibility physically or mentally. And that's also trauma. We got my brother Ali. And what's up, Ali? What's your opinion on this before I share the screen and we go in on some of the statistics?
Like I said, peace to Brother George and peace to Brother Richie also. Once again, Mr. George, you're here with another headbanger, something to make us think and something that is very relevant. I think that we all are familiar in a way with this subject, though it's something that we don't really talk about as much as we should. We all know of instances of fellas we've grown up with, that we chopped it up with, and if you ever get a chance to ever sit and drink one with them or smoke one with them when we used to do that, stuff like this may come out. I personally know of a guy who that happened to, and he displayed behavior that up until then I thought was questionable, and then when him and his other friends came out with it, I was like, oh, okay, that's what's up, But I'm waiting for us to get deeper into this. Hopefully, we're gonna have another great discussion.
Right. Damn, I'm sitting there. I ain't been on it so long. I'm trying to get my thoughts back together. Hey, I told you I was rusty, Richie. Yeah. And I attribute this also to our relationships with each other. What I've noticed is how we always complain a lot, Ali, about black men can't come together, black men can't stick together. Black men have such vitriol towards each other. Hey, listen. The reason why I named this that silent cry in the dark room. Some of this conversation pertains to our behavior towards each other and our anger towards each other. You have a lot of boys that's been violated, man, by other men, and nobody ever came to help them. Nobody ever came to their aid, and they wasn't able to come out and express themselves to the society because society frowns upon that. So they was forced to keep a lot of that bottled in and that anger bottled in. And when you see a lot of the guys in the street uncompromising towards other brothers and so angry towards other brothers, or unwilling or distant and unwilling to work with other brothers, and they may not even be homosexual, but you can see the behavior of black men towards each other in the black community. You can't rule this out. You can't discount this. You know what I mean? When I read some of the stuff that goes on, because this is just something like literally you can look at the black community and you can look at black YouTube and you can look at the streets. Just think of this, Richie and Ali. When do you ever hear any conversations about black males talk, unless it's an open homosexual? When do you ever hear black men talking about they were sexually violated?
Never.
No, it's only associated with prison. Again, we talk about forgetting about it. We talk about it as a product, or we talk about the byproducts of what comes after the abuse, violent behavior, homosexual behavior, all of those issues we talk about. Well, we don't ever actually analyze the abuse. I think the only time the conversation happens really is when we're talking about the prison system. That's the only time I've seen that abuse tackled in a somewhat of a conversation. But when you're talking about the usual, the family members, like what that brother experienced that we had on the channel, nope. That's a conversation that's least had.
Right, and I think that when we have these conversations about black men and black women relationships, our dysfunctions, I think we do ourselves a disservice by not having and I think the more and more we have these conversations, the more and more we can begin to get to the bottom of things. Because if you're talking about men being the leaders and the men should lead, then we're going to have to do a thorough examination of the black man on so many different levels. PTSD, undiagnosed issues. Hold on one second. Hold on. Man, I always leave my darn ring on. This sexual abuse. So many different things, because we have to really understand and figure out who's leading us. Richie, who are the people that we're choosing as men to lead us? Because, like I said, we're suffering from so much dysfunction, and when you see our inability to come together and our inability to work with each other, these are a lot of things. Because I can prove it to you. When you hear women talk about their sexual dysfunction, what do you mostly hear them say? They for the most part, they made terrible choices in men, because their mind was skewed at a very young age, and the way that their thought process and the way that they move was off. So when we hear women say this, why don't we attribute this to our men as well? See, we don't, because we're not having this conversation when it comes to men. So a lot of these men that's coming into your homes, dating your daughters, what is his mindset about family? What is his mindset about togetherness and working with certain things? What is his background? Where does he come from? See, we do this with the women, but we don't do this with the men. But then what happens is, with us men, we get criticized and we get bombarded with a bunch of vitriol because of our behavior that we display. But that's because we got a lot of secrets. That's bringing about the behavior that we're exhibiting when we come out into the society, but don't nobody want to talk about it. See, if I went live right now and I said George Macon is about to go in on someone, I have a bunch of people. But when people read that title, don't nobody want to come in here and talk about this, Richie.
Well, that's it. I mean, again, at the viewpoint of how power is perceived is it goes with the same way we look at energy. Everything is on a combustible level, meaning that we look at explosive energy as the most powerful. So as you said, when it's about a male displaying that kind of power where, now, you're exploding, you're going in on something or someone, that's what people associate with being masculine. That's what people associate with being male. But they don't see the other side of power, which is, having to compromise, having to listen, having to understand what's wrong with yourself and deal with those issues accordingly before you talk to other people. That's a form of power. That's a form of kingship. But again, in this day and age, it's not recognized in the same way. We only look at aggression as true power. So that's why to have this conversation is a problem, because most of the time when you're talking to an abuse victim, you're not shouting, you're not screaming, you're not trying to be dogmatic with a point. You have to listen. You have to be loving. So just on that premise alone, it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of males to have, because it feels like they're too vulnerable in that setting. And it doesn't feel like a true sense of masculine power to be talking in those tones of voice and in that way. So that's why you have a harder time getting people to the table to have those conversations. By the way, big up, Brother Ali. I didn't say big up to you when you came on.
Peace, bro. But yeah, you just said some real things and you definitely hit upon it when you said the actual tone of the conversation. That the tone that would be required for that conversation, brothers from who are our age and came in the time when we came up, that's a very uncomfortable tone to have. We normally try to avoid having that tone with our homies, you know what I'm saying? Because your homie, you would think that your homie might look at you funny, Also, like you were saying, damn, I just lost the damn train of thought. God damn, you were just touching upon men. Also, this is a difficult subject because men do not want to have that feeling of ever being a victim. You know what I'm saying? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
All right, but yeah, that's something that we're definitely not comfortable with. You know, we're not comfortable with that feeling of where we can ever be the victim. You know, and so that also contributes to the difficulty of us talking about such things in our community. So brothers just have to bottle this, and when you bottle things, eventually it explode out. And I think that is what we're seeing a lot of times in a lot of cases where we're asking, well, damn, what the hell happened? What the hell made him do that? You know, we're seeing the effects of damage that they've had done to them young, and they've had it bottled in, and it just eventually explodes outwards.
All right, I'm gonna get into some of the statistics and things that's talked about. Because I'm gonna tell you something too. A lot of y'all out there are very loose with your children. A lot of y'all out there will let your children spend the night over people's homes. You leave. It's okay for your children to go over to people's homes, and a lot of your children has a lot of freedom. Back in the day, a lot of boys that was molested. See, I'm not going to talk about the girls today because you know that's going to be for another platform today. I'm just talking about the boys and men. A lot of times the boys were molested by the uncle, the mom boyfriend. You know, you had to remember our communities was destroyed with crack, and a lot of boys were living inside crack houses. Or mom started smoking crack and she would be high and all kinds of company would be over. And a lot of boys was touched in. Also, a lot of girls were touched in. But a lot of boys were touched in. You live in cities like Philadelphia and Oakland, down in Florida and New York and all those different places. This shit was going on, man. And they did a study, Ali, Richie, that a lot of the black men that's on death row or was locked up for very violent crimes, 75% of them have been sexually assaulted in their life. 75%. And they enacted that pain that they kept bottled out on everyone else because they never had an avenue or a place where they can come out and really talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you had you man, it's difficult because you know I sit around when I'm talking. There's a couple people I know that from my last videos that I've done that came to me and we sat and talked about it, but they won't come on the show and talk about it. Brothers are talking in silent. Brothers are talking to you when it's just in one-on-one, but they're not. A lot of brothers are married. They got children, and they're not willing to share that. But a lot of times their behaviors, if you watch their behaviors, is still reflecting that trauma because it's never been dealt with. It's never been dealt with. So I want to get into this. This is common reactions. Men and boys who have been sexually assaulted may experience the same effects of sexual assaults as other survivors, and they may face other challenges that are more unique to their experience. Some men who survive sexual assaults as adults feel shame or self-doubt, believing that they should have been strong enough to fight off the perpetrator. Many men who experience an erection or ejaculation during the assault may be confused and wonder what this means. These normal psychological responses do not in any way imply that you wanted, invited, or enjoyed the assault. It's something that happened to you. Know that it's not your fault and you are not alone. Men who were sexually abused as boys or teens may also respond differently than men who were sexually assaulted as adults. We just spoke about that. The following list includes some of the common experiences shared by men and boys who survived sexual assault. It is not a complete list, but it may help you. It may help you to know that other people are having similar experiences. Anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now we talk about that a lot. Post-traumatic stress disorder from so many different angles, but this is one example of undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder that's never been dealt with, flashbacks, eating disorders, avoiding people or places that remind you of the assault or abuse, concerns or questions about sexual orientation, fear of the worst happening, and having the sense of a shortened future. Now, I want to stop right there for a minute. Now, listen to that, Richie. Fear of the worst happening and having the sense of a shortened future. So when you look at the crime that goes on in our community and some of the brothers whose hearts are colder than Minnesota, and they say, man, I don't care. I don't think I'm gonna make it to live to be 25 anyway. Nobody ever gave a fuck about us. Why should I trust you? This is the talk. This is what I'm saying right now is the words that you hear brothers say. Why should I care? Nobody care. All I care about is my niggas. Like, this is the thought process because we're walking around with a lot of pain and we're crying in a dark room. So when I hear this, fear of the worst happening. See, because in their mind, what happened to them that they can never reconcile, that's the only thing that they can see because it's never been dealt with. And having the sense of a shortened future, feeling like less of a man, or that you no longer have control of your own body, feeling on edge, being unable to relax, and having difficulty sleeping, sense of blame or shame over not being able to stop the assault or abuse, especially if you experience an erection or ejaculation, withdrawn from relationships or friendships, and an increased sense of isolation and the ability to be selfish, only care about yourself. Some of these guys will be the ones that are sleep with your wife because they can't conceptualize any form of loyalty to anything but themselves because that's the way that they protect themselves. And see, Ali, I don't really care how many people come in the chat room and watch. I'm gonna push this thing until I force brothers to come out and talk about this stuff. Because if we're going to be the leaders of the community, we're going to have to clean up. We're going to have to.
Again, let me add this, George. Yeah, I mean, from the list that you're reading there, what we got to understand is, and why this is something that we're not going to be able to skip over is, while we have these conversations about black leadership and what we're going to do in the diaspora and what we're going to do to get ourselves out of these situations and white supremacy, yeah, this is directly affecting your critical thinking. As those highlighters, show, they're changing your viewpoint on life and how to view getting out of problems now, not just involving those actual situations of, being in a relationship and whatever that are most definitely devastated and affected by those same thought patterns that you have. But now we're talking about wider issues when it comes to how you're going to view yourself and how you see yourself getting out of certain problems in day-to-day society. As you said, if you have a viewpoint of always thinking the worst, how are you supposed to ever think positive? How are you supposed to maintain a job? How are you supposed to maintain certain aspects? So this is a bigger and wider reaching problem than just, it messing with future relationships. This is actually messing with your critical thinking, your problem solving centers of your brain and of yourself. So that's why you're not going to get away from this issue. It has to be dealt with because, again, the numbers speak to the vast amount of our people, male, female, and child, that are being abused. So if we know that these are the byproducts of the abuse, we have to link all of these dysfunctional behaviors, all of these leaders that fall short, all of these people that come up with these sidebar messages that just don't take us no. We got to start to link it to the dysfunction that starts with the abuse.
I got a question for the panel and even for the chat. And I'm gonna be saying I'm not even being funny because I know a lot of times I can talk a lot of shit, but I'm just being real. When you look at Black YouTube and you deal with a lot of brothers in the manosphere or in other areas, and a lot of brothers talk about their hatred towards women and their vitriol towards their mothers and women doing them wrong or not trusting them and all these type of things. And they have, they have a lot of anger from the past of people that overlooked them or didn't choose them or didn't see. You have to pay attention to the behaviors of our people. See, you can't look at a person that's just been molested, but then don't look at their behaviors. See, because when I'm reading these signs, these behaviors tell you what to look for, and it also black mothers, it tells you what to look for in your children. While you at work working 2 jobs, take care of your kids, and your kids are home, or your kids go over to certain people's homes to spend the night during the weekends because you got to work that night shift. You got to pay attention. And this is why you got to read these get online and read these books and read these articles and different things, so that way you can pay attention to your children. Your children are isolated. They're super emotional. They're always crying. They got a problem with you. They always say, well, you was never there for me. When your children talk like that, that's a fucking red flag, man. Especially with boys. They was never there for me. Nobody ever cared about me. They didn't. See, because that's him saying I need help. But you know why the perpetrators get away when they molest little boys? Because for a young man to come out and go after the perpetrator, that's him admitting that he was sexually molested. But what about this man? Now he has a wife. He has children. He's seen as an upstanding, strong man in a society. He's not going to go after and attack that and go after that perpetrator that did that to him, because he don't want to be outed as a person who it happened to. So we pass this dysfunction down. We pass the dysfunction down.
Exactly, George. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I like to tell people, I like to share with my wife and other people that I talk to concerning this, that we have a bad issue in our community of keeping things quiet, keeping things secret. I can remember growing up and friends, they would have uncles that lived with them, and their older uncles would always stay in his room, and the mother or the grandmother would be like, y'all can't ever go to that room. And that seemed odd to me. You know what I'm saying? I thought that, their uncle must be like a monster or something. You know what I'm saying? We are young. But now, as I have gotten older and I have grown up, and sometimes I've talked to them once again, the situation was it was one of those uncles, one of those Chester uncles. And the grandma or the mother was trying to keep us kids away from them. You know what I'm saying? And even when I think about friends, families, and I think about where this situation has happened, where an uncle has touched someone, auntie has touched someone, and grandma refuses to damn talk about it. She wants to damn keep it quiet, because I've seen someone take it to their grandma that this happened, and grandma throw her hands up. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. Don't even talk about it to me. And that really bugged me, that we have these dark secrets that we like to keep in our communities, in our families. Just think about all the families that have those dark secrets that are just sitting there, boiling.
See, Ali, that's because Big Mama was molested too. See, one thing that we got to remember, that coming out of slavery, when we came out of slavery, there was no so-called Dr. Phil's couches or Ayana come fix my life and come sit and deal with these psychological traumas that we left out of slavery with, all the psychological traumas. And we went on so-called free, and we went on into our homes and began to build families. Remember, they used to put bags over the mother's head and the child head and make the child sleep with the mother to produce a better slave. I mean, that's where your term motherfucker came from. So this stuff was normal. We began to normalize this dysfunction. And when we left out with this. And then at the same time, we still had the mental change. So white men were still sleeping. Like, it's a lot of things. If you go back to the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, our grandmothers used to clean white people's homes. For a black woman to accuse a white man in the South of rape in the 20s or the 30s, that could mean death. So we had a lot of things that happened to us that was kept secret, and we passed down generationally. That was never. So now when mom, or when the daughter or the son went to Big Mama and said, I've been molested, she told him to be quiet, because there was no independent woman back then. Her way of feeding those kids was solely dependent upon that man that may be molesting the whole goddamn house when he come home drunk. So these are the things that was never dealt with because we didn't. So when you see your butch aunt and she come to the barbecue or gay cousin Larry, they was always there, but they wasn't put out in the front, but they was there and it was happening. So we talk a lot about the young girls that was being molested when the uncle come up in the room during the party while everybody's downstairs drunk, and he come up and touch the little girl, but we never said anything about him touching a little boy. We never said nothing about him touching that little boy. And when you notice that little boy grows up, he's in and out of juvie hall. He's stealing cars. He's unruly. Mom can't control him no more. And you attribute it to just him. Oh, he's just acting out. He's just being bad. He'll mature. No. It's certain things that went on, but mama don't want to talk about it, or pop don't want to talk about it because they know certain things that happen to them and it's been passed down. And these are the things that went on and is still going on. A lot of these young girls today are having children and they're not equipped to be parents. And they want to go out to the clubs and they just leaving their children with anybody. They're getting boyfriends, and they having sex with the boyfriend in a week. And within 2-3 weeks, she's going to work, leaving him in the house with the kids.
Yes, I've experienced that personally. Meet young ladies. You know, I met some, and I've only been, the second day I'm laid up around there, and then she want to run to the damn store or something, and it's like women use it as a test, and they're like, "Hey, can you watch my children while I run to the store?" And when I think back on it now, I'm like, those women are crazy. I could have been a goddamn molester. I could have had problems.
But this comes from the mentality of that woman who most likely was never protected. See, because she grew up under a system where she was protected and understood she would know not to leave her children. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, and I don't want to put this where we put all the blame on women. I'm just speaking about the dysfunction, and unfortunately, a lot of the children in the community are left with the moms. It's just I'm gonna keep reading. I want to keep reading first. Who are the perpetrators of sexual assaults against men and boys? Perpetrators can be any gender, identity, sexual orientation, or age, and they can have a relationship with the victim. Like all perpetrators, they might use psychological, physical force, or psychological and emotional coercion tactics. Can being assaulted affect sexual orientation? Sexual assault is in no way related to the sexual orientation of the perpetrator or the survivor, and the person's sexual orientation cannot be caused by sexual abuse or assault. Some men and boys have questions about their sexuality after surviving an assault or abuse, and that's understandable. This can be especially true if you experience an erection. They can keep saying that during the assault. Psychological responses like an erection are involuntary, meaning you have no control over them. Sometimes perpetrators, especially adults who sexually abuse boys, will use psychological responses to maintain secrecy by using phrases such as "you know you liked it," if you have been sexually abused or assaulted, it's not your fault. In no way does an erection invite unwanted sexual activity. How to support male survivors? If it can be hard to tell someone that you have experienced sexual assault or abuse. Now, I'm gonna read some more, but for some of y'all that's watching this, I really want you guys to share this video. I think it's very important. Some of the mothers that's in here that may see this, I want you to sit down and watch this with your sons and ask your sons questions. Sit down and watch it with your nephews and ask your sons questions. It's very important. Do not avoid the question. I do not want you guys to get older and be sitting there and your sons are very angry with you and he don't know how to express himself to you, or saying that you wasn't there or you wasn't there to protect me. That's why a lot of these boys out here have such vitriol towards their fathers. It's not just because he wasn't there, because he wasn't there to protect them. For many male survivors, stereotypes about masculinity can also make it hard to disclose to friends, families, or the community. Men and boys may also face challenges believing that it is possible for them to be believing that it is possible for them to be victims of sexual violence, especially if it's perpetrated by a woman. I mean, we're going to get to that in a minute. Below are a few suggestions of how to support a man or boy who discloses to you that he has experienced sexual assault or abuse. So just imagine if you're a wife and you've been with your husband for 10, 15 years, and he was a provider, big, strong man, provider of a family, hold the community down, and one day he comes and breaks down and tells you that he was molested from the time he was 6 to 16. How would you deal with that? Because, and that's what I'm saying, like, we hold this shit in. Now, these are some of the things that they say. The first thing is listen. Many people in crisis feel as though no one understands them. You hear that a lot of times from women, from young girls. No one understands them and that they are not taken seriously. Show them they matter by giving your undivided attention. It is hard for many survivors to disclose assault or abuse, especially if they fear not being believed because of stereotypes about masculinity. Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to read this, validate their feelings, and I'm going to open up something. Watch this. Validate their feelings. Avoid making overly positive statements like it will get better, or trying to manage their emotions like snap out of it, or you shouldn't feel so bad. Make statements like I believe in you, or that sounds like you're like it really wait a minute, my reading today is off. I believe in you, or that sounds like you're really it's hard thing you're going through. Express concern. Tell them in a direct way that you care about them by saying something like, I care about you and I'm here for you. Now, Richie, what do you hear out of the brothers in Black YouTube that have vitriol towards Black women and their mother? Rejection. Rejection.
Yeah.
Now you're reading these concerns and you're reading like they're behaving in an unusual way that's unnormal to men. When we hear them say, well, she didn't talk to me when I was 17, or she didn't choose me, or my mother wasn't there. Listen. Now, when I'm reading this, what do you hear, Richie? When you hear these brothers with a problem with being rejected or not feeling like people was there for them or validating their emotions and feelings, you have to pay attention to what. See, man, listen, a lot of people telling themselves, man, all you got to do is listen to them talk. They're telling themselves.
And think about the guy, I don't want to say his name on your show, but there's a popular YouTube guy, and I hear it in his speech anytime that I happen to catch him or catch a piece of what he's saying. It is painfully obvious to me that his mother or sister or someone done something to him that causes him to have such vitriol for women. And it's just obvious to me.
Right. You can look at the behaviors and the inability to get past rejection, the inability to get past she didn't care about me. You wasn't there for me. You have to listen to these things, man. The same way we can point out the Black girls. They say, well, these Black girls, she didn't have fathers, so she ended up on a stripper pole. First man that said something nice to her, her panties fell down. She's very promiscuous. Well, what if those are so Richie, Ali, Kalam in the chat, Sci-Fi, if those are the symptoms of women, then what is the symptoms of Black boys? See, we easily point out those symptoms of women, but what are the symptoms of Black boys when they've been touched? How do we recognize that, Ali?
Boom, there you go.
So you go to the club and you see the girl on the stripper pole and she banging dudes for money, partying dudes. She no longer has any type of feeling towards sex. It's just something to do. She's numb. She's immune because she was violated at a very young age. But how do we identify this with our boys if we're not having a conversation And we don't know how to identify it because the boys don't come out and say anything about it. How do we identify it, Richie?
You see, the problem is that you're going to find is that in the backdrop of modern day society, we're already in a highly sexualized point in time across the board. So now to be promiscuous it's looked at as a normality. It's been made into a normality. This is why it's harder to see if somebody is crying out for help in using that over sexualized behavior, because nowadays you're looking at it and again you think it's normal. We're even encouraged to tell our sons, you know, if they come home and they have a sexual experience from young, we're patting them on the back. You know, we're encouraging them. So again, it's very hard to see these things because again, we got an over sexualized backdrop. That's why when you're raising your children, it matters that you speak to them about sex. It matters that you have conversations with them and know about their development. And granted, every child is going to get up to their own adventures here, there, and everywhere. But if you don't have a regular conversation, and if, as I always say, as a parent, if your child doesn't at least know what you're going to say within certain conversations, even if they don't come and actually talk to you in real time, that's a problem. Because as a parent to a child, you want your child to always understand where you stand and that you are there for them. Yeah, it's a lot harder to listen to an abused child if you've never really listened to them before that. So that's one of the key things I will say to help parents in listening. You got to develop this listening skills from before the trouble happens. You have to have conversations with your children before the madness happens for you to be able to see this. And remember, going back to the paragraph before about what happens in an abusive situation, you got to remember, as they said, the abusers already use Jedi mind tricks on your child or on that young male to make them believe that they have participated in it. They're not a victim of it. They've participated in it. Because remember, you're speaking to this male psyche that doesn't want to feel dominated naturally. Yeah, it wants to feel like you're asserting yourself. So again, when somebody now has co-opted your mind into thinking you participated, you're not victim, you weren't even held down, you willingly participated now, the whole paradigm becomes different for that child and for that person. So the way you communicate with them, the way you have to analyze them when they are expressing certain behaviors, you have to have your head on correctly to understand that situation as it unfolds with you.
Yeah, and it's crazy, like, because you hit it on the nail, you hit on the head. I'm gonna tell you something, something that I learned. Me being a dad of boys, and I'm kind of hard on my boys, and I've noticed that my son, like if my son did something wrong, or he fell, or he didn't do as good as he should on something, he won't come to me. He stopped coming to me and telling me stuff. He would go to my wife. He would go to my wife. But I'm gonna tell you, I learned a lesson behind that. I had to, because you know, just being a dad, you're raising boys, and you see how the moms let them get away with everything, and they love on them. And I'm the other side. I'm I'm fire and brimstone. I love on them too. I spoil them, but I'm also the discipline. I discipline too. But I've noticed that when he does something less than desirable, or he doesn't achieve certain things, he'll go to her and not me. And I started to find I had to check I'm really, but I ain't gonna say I had to. I'm really learning how to check myself, because I'm trying to find that curve where, how do I balance that out to still being that disciplinary dad, but having my son comfortable enough that if something happened to him, or just do anything, he feels comfortable when I pick him up from school and saying, "Dad, let me tell you what happened." Instead of we're around a half an hour from his school to home, and he don't tell me shit, he go tell my wife, and then I hear about it through my wife because he done told her, but not me. Like, how do you get that balance as a pot? You feel what I'm saying?
Bro, look, my situation is I was thrown into the deep end. And as I told you, my baby mother passed away. So I've got my kids. So I've got to kind of play both roles. And the one thing I've had to come to realize is that there's nature and there's nurture. When you're dealing with boys and you're a man, it's nature for them to naturally come to you in a lot of situations because they're males and you're male and they're looking up to you. But the nurturing side, which is naturally the woman's side, yeah, is why they go over there. Now, obviously, as a parent, you don't want to nurture negative behavior. And a lot of the time we have this tussle with our partners, our women partners, about the fact that, you're nurturing, you're allowing them to get away. You're nurturing certain behaviors that you as the main disciplinarian, if that's the case in your house, you don't want that. So obviously it's got to be a balance in between you, as you said, being approachable enough, but always being on a level where, again, as the adult and the person that's lived certain experience, you don't nurture behaviors that are going to end in a negative. Yeah, and it's a hard one for us men because, again, it's a tonal thing. I know the way my baby mother and their mother spoke to them is in tones and ways that I cannot mimic. I can't do it. You get me? I can only be as sincere as possible and in my own way lower my voice, make sure my face is as straight and as smiley and as inviting as possible, give my sons hugs and give them that affection that, again, I know they are naturally looking for from their mothers when they go to them to tell them something. See, it's funny. You take these things for granted. But now that I find myself in this situation, I've had to really dig deep into my memory banks and remember watching my boys talking with their mother and every little gesture that she did, from eye contact to hand contact. This is the role that we as men have to play. And again, most of the time we're relied upon to be the disciplinarian. And a lot of the time, women have to stop asking us to do that so much. It should be a back and forth. They should be supporting you as much as you want in disciplining the kids and keeping rules. But then you need to learn as a man to be as nurturing as possible. So again, you don't sound like a broken record, always shouting, always going hard on your kids, because again, it creates the paradigm, what you're saying, where you can be picking up your son and you're asking 1,000 questions about school and this and that, and they ain't got shit to say to you. And then, 2 hours later, your wife is sitting there and she's saying, yeah, did you know the teacher said this and that and da 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 da, and he had a fight today in school, and you're like, what? He didn't say nothing to me. Like, that's happened 1,000 times. So, it's definitely a real-time problem, but those are the only facets I can say to help.
Let me ask both of you then. Did anybody else come on the panel? Because I can't see.
No, it's still me, you, and Malik.
Okay. So let me ask both of y'all. Y'all as dads, and this is pertaining to this. I'm lining all this up. When we hear stories about young boys being touched, and then me being a dad, I'm not the most affectionate person because my father wasn't the most affectionate person. My father was the type that he went to work and made sure you had what he had, but my father was never really the type of person that be like, son, I love you. He didn't talk like that. Like my uncle did, but my father didn't. My father showed you his love by being a provider and doing things, but my father was never that type of person that I could sit down and my dad, let me tell you about this. Like he was always at work, and I had to do that with my uncle. I didn't have that. And I think that, do you think that being with your sons when you're not that type of dad, being approachable or being able for them to sit down and talk to, they're more susceptible to these type of things happening to them because they're searching for that validation from that masculine energy as young boys. What do y'all think about that?
I don't necessarily think that, George, because my father also was not the affectionate type. I can remember him stumbling and bumbling to try and say, "I love y'all." He like mumbled something out. But one thing that I always knew was that my dad had my damn back though, and if I came and told him something, someone bothering with me,
He gonna,
whatever,
he
he
gonna,
gonna be out there with me. He gonna, hey, where are they? Let's go get them. You know.
but do you
So
think? But do you think? Because sometimes I'm gonna tell you, it's funny because my son one time came up and he wrapped his arm around me and he hugged me and I gave him a kiss on the forehead. But it was kind of like awkward and weird for me because I never, even like my daughter, like my wife one time was like, hug your daughter. And I love my children to death. I die for my children. But I didn't grow up in that kind of culture. Like my father wasn't like that. So it was kind of like, and I'm trying to break that cycle. I want to be more attentive, where more how can I say more? I'm trying to find the right words.
I
I,
know what you mean,
I don't
man.
want to be that dad that's just a provider. I
You
want
want to be more affectionate,
to
bro. That's what you
There
want
you
to
go.
be.
That's the word.
because I
You
think
get me?
because I think especially for boys growing up in their development, it's important. Because I got in a lot of trouble because of my dad not being affectionate. I never got touched, but I will say I probably was young and put myself in situations where could have been in my immaturity, but not listening and doing unruly stuff. It could have happened to me, but by the grace of the Most High, I never did. But me and my father didn't get along a lot because he wasn't that affectionate type of father that I needed him to be. So as I'm getting older, I'm learning and I'm starting to see that young boys in their development really need that, not just from mom though. They need that from dad too.
Well, definitely. If they don't see you showing affection, how are they supposed to know when to show affection and how to show affection when they get older? As you said, if it's not shown to you, how are they supposed to know when to show in their adult life? Like we always talk about people who don't do things, but we never really talk about if that person's never being shown certain things, how are you supposed to learn something? You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? So it's important on that level. It's the same way it's important for your kids to see you show love to their mother. You know what I'm saying? If they never experience seeing their dad show any sort of love to their mother or other black females or whatever, like that's gonna have an impact then later on down when it's time for them to have relationships with females. If they've never seen you do it, how are they supposed to know? Let alone your relationship with them, obviously on a personal one. As we said, if you want them to open up to you, but they only know you for telling them off all the time, that's not going to help your situation. That's not going to ingratiate yourself to them. But again, as I said, it's got to be a balance between being loving and approaching. But as I said, my kids need to understand what I think of most of these situations before time. So when you do strike out on your own, when you are with your little friends and you're getting into your little mischief and all the rest of it, again, you've got a basis to remember what I said to you and what I'm going to say to you when you come back, if the scenario doesn't go well, or you somehow need to now tell me, or if I was transported to that spot right then and there, what I would say.
and
So
look,
that's the balance,
and
not
look,
compromising on that shit.
and look, Richie. And the reason why I said this for the brothers on the panel and everybody in the chat room that's watching is a reason why I'm saying this. Now, look, now I want y'all to see this, right? If my son, Richie's son, Ali's children, any of y'all sons, if they're more comfortable with going to their mothers on certain things and not comfortable coming to you based off of their relationship with you, they may tell you certain things, but if he gets into a fight or he does something that he doesn't want, he thinks he's going to get in trouble, or he thinks that he's going to be looked What's up, Solving the Race Problem? I sent you the link. Come on in.
Peace, brother. I'm in here right now.
All right, cool. Yeah, so if I want y'all to hear what I'm saying, because this is very important. If your son feels as though I can't come tell my daddy something like this, my daddy may hurt somebody, or my daddy may blame or may think I'm weak. Now, in his mind, he may think that you think that he's going to be weak based off of the experience that he has. So we as dads, when we dealing with our sons, when we dealing with this type of shit, we have to have, it's sort of like something like Richie, like what you said earlier, and yesterday on the phone, kind of like that rite of passage with your son, where you are totally at the forefront of the development of your boy, where he has to damn near see you as God. Because if not, man, these things can happen right up under your nose and you would never know. Because he might not find the words or the courage to even come and tell you. So I'm learning how to be more of just that provider father, but being that father that I wanted my dad to be. Because I think I actually became my dad to my boys. If y'all understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
definitely.
1,000%. And what the brother was just adding in, I think is exact and true, because the dynamic that we're trying to set for Black men, it definitely has a purpose. Like, we're trying to build up these young Black men to not be overly emotional within society, because we see the detrimental effects of men that are overly emotional, whether it manifests itself in over-sexualization, whether it manifests itself through violence, if small interactions. So if we don't want the young boys to be over emotional, so as men, we teaching them how to have some decorum, how to show some respect, but that's where the balance comes in, because if they are too, if they don't have any emotion, and they're kind of emotionally cut off, and they're not getting that nurturing aspect, it's kind of just that hard nose. And you'll have them examples of it being awkward and not being able to say I love you, son. But I think us being able to give them a safety net to kind of foster their growth and establish that you can still be a strong Black man, and having the emotion and using it when it's necessary. And I think having a woman by your side and having a strong Black family unit kind of harbors that and incubates that to make it grow to what it's supposed to be. That's how I look at these dynamics playing out.
Yeah, it brings in that balance, because I can truly say that, and my heart goes out to Richie, because I know it's hard, because I couldn't even imagine being in a house with all these with these kids and grandbabies without my wife here. That shit. Yeah.
It, bro, it's a nightmare. Trust me.
I think the movie is the end.
Go ahead. Oh, that sci-fi? Was that sci-fi? I can't see nobody.
Yo.
Yeah, go ahead, Richie.
No. She was talking to me on another line.
Oh, came right through.
You hear me? Yeah. Listen, the situation, as I said, is a difficult one, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, because it's a definite hard one to navigate, where you got to jump into both roles. And again, I haven't been able to just do it by myself. I have had my mum, my sister, other female friends support me during the process, because again, I think for you to be an island, just you one, and that's either one, whether it's a woman by herself or a man by himself, it's not really conducive. So you will need support.
Hey, Rich, but this is why I'm very slow to disrespect any type of Black women, because I'm gonna tell you something. Black women been doing this for a long time, raising multiple children, and Big Mama and Mommy and all this. And when you thrust into that role, man, of having to do that, man, and play them hats that those women play within the, see, we think that, okay, I'm going to work and the mom is with the kids. You think that ain't no job. Man, that shit ain't no.
Well, you see, this is what's funny. Today's society, no one respects that. If somebody says they're staying home to look after their child full time, we kind of snuff at that now and look at a woman like, boy, you need to get out there and do a part-time job. You need to do something, because you saying you're staying at home to just look after children doesn't sound like an adequate amount of work that you're doing. You understand?
Yeah.
So this is why it's overlooked. But as I said, when you're in the position and it's every day, you've got to be on call for someone. You've got to answer the questions. You have to entertain, stimulate, and lay guidelines every day for and protect. It's a whole different shot. Yeah, it's a whole different shot.
All right, I'm gonna read these last two before we go to the next. What if the abuse happened when I was a minor? If you were sexually abused when you were a child or a teenager, you may have a different feelings or reaction at different times in your life. The one in 6 websites has answers to many of the questions or concerns you might have as an adult survivor of child or teen sexual abuse. How could this affect my relationships? Coming forward, and I'm gonna speak to this in a second. Coming forward about surviving sexual assaults or sexual abuse can be difficult. It requires a lot of trust and understanding, both for you and the person you choose to tell. You can find answers to some of the questions you might have about telling your partner in the 1 to 6. I want to say this. A lot of times we speak about women and how women are how Black women can be difficult. And how when you find out these women they say 1 out of 6 women are molested before the age of 18, and we find out that these women, they hold up a guard and they make bad choices in men and they can't be trusted and they're sexually promiscuous and all these different things, right? We see all these different things in women, but then, as what I just said before, solving the race problem, how do we point out the behaviors in Black boys that have been molested? Is he a whore? Does he jump from bed to bed? Is he a woman beater? Does he make a lot of children without a care taking care of them? What is the symptoms and the behaviors that you can pinpoint to the Black boy that's been molested? The same way we can say the Black girl's molested, she keeps up a guard, she's hard, she's overly aggressive, she's super sensitive, she's all of these different things. How do we find these things out when it comes to the boys solving the race problem?
I would say that is this way, and I'm glad you're talking about this, because this is a dynamic that rarely gets addressed, because young Black boys are usually over sexualized prematurely. And what I mean by that is young Black boys are introduced to sex faster than, I would say, their female counterparts. And what ends up happening is there might be an older female that somebody puts introduces to the young boys, and young boys being introduced to promiscuous behavior and having sex with over women. So the young Black male is over sexualized since the fact of them being like young teenagers. And we don't really look at that as rape and molestation the same way we would look at a young 11, 12, 13-year-old girl, being involved with a grown man. We would look at that much different than a 12, 13-year-old young boy being involved with a grown woman. We might even say the young boy, give him props, give him a slap on the back. And that's the dynamic, the toxic nature of the dynamic that's over sexualizing the young Black male. So how do we identify those characteristics in the contemporary sense? I would say things like the Black male being overly interested in non-monogamous sex with multiple women, showing that they don't really have that commitment factor, the over sexualization, because they were exposed to the sexuality, the sexual experience is so young. And a lot of times they get rewarded through that behavior, whether it's your peer group, giving you a slap on the back. Yeah, man, that's what's up. Or, you enjoying the sex itself. So being a young boy and having that type of experience, you're going to constantly be chasing it. And we see that manifested through, multiple women getting pregnant, non-monogamous sex, no commitment in a relationship. And then that's how I usually spot somebody who's been doing this for a while. But that's just my analysis looking at it based on my observations and experiences.
Well, I'm gonna say something that's gonna hurt some feelings for a second. I'm gonna shake it up. Let's just go on ahead and do it. How about
before you say that, George, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Go in.
What's up, Teller Green? I wish we had more people in here, but I'm about to say something that's gonna be fucked up and people ain't gonna like it. But fuck it. How about when your boys was young and he got exposed to that brown Brown Sugar 14, and the VHS tape, and Blacktail magazine under the mattress, right? And he threw in Sugar Bush 12, and he watched that, and he starts seeing sexual stuff when he's about 10 years old. He's looking at that, and now, mind you, his mind can't fully conceptualize what he's watching, but he's trying to emulate. So he see them touching certain things. He's looking at his stuff. He starts to touch certain things. Then that boy goes into the room and he starts freaking on his little sisters in them. See, here we go. So now,
hell no.
Now watch this though. But it happens. It happens. They're grinding on each other. They're doing certain things because maybe they heard mom getting her back beat out Wednesday night while they was in bed, or they found, like I said, the porn under the bed. And this boy, he's still a kid. He's only 9, 10, 11 years old. And he's seeing these things, and now that dopamine is starting to go through, sending that thing down the spinal cord. He's getting that feeling that he has no understanding of what it is, and he begins to do certain things inside the home because that's where it starts. If he's not being touched, he begins. See, this is why you got to be real careful about what your children watch, because like you might get your son or your nephew, and the girl niece come over, and he see people kissing or people grinding. He begins to want to emulate it and try it. See, if we're gonna talk this truth, we gotta keep it always 100 if we really want to save our children or pay attention to what's going on, because these children are doing these things and they may not have been touched, but they seeing things and being exposed to things that the mind is not yet ready or should have been exposed to. And they begin to emulate what they see. And they do these things. So you got to be real careful, because there's a lot of siblings that grind on each other, or cousin, or the cousin came over the house for summer vacation and he grinding on his cousin's butt because he's seen it. Man, listen, man.
Oh yeah. Cousins get it in.
Careful about what you leave around the house and what your sons and your daughters are seeing.
That's it.
Man. But see, that right there, what I'm saying right now, oh, people ain't gonna want to talk about that. See, because I'm gonna tell you, I guarantee you right now, I went into somebody's wheelhouse. Right now, somebody's listening right now, either had that happen to them from their brother or their sister, or they did it. Now, I'm not mad at you because you may have been a child and you didn't know any better. And as you got older, you knew it was wrong and you stopped. But what I'm saying to you as an adult, be very careful what you leave around your children. Be very careful what you let your children watch.
You see the problem? The only reason why certain people are going to get upset at that statement, adults that are, is because, again, it falls under the classic, when you've got children, you've got to give them your attention, and nowadays the television, the PlayStation, it acts as a surrogate for you when you're doing other things. In order to keep your child away from most of these things, it requires you, the parent, to be interactive with your child, whether it be you set them tasks, whether you do something with them, whether you watch something with them, or whether you closely monitor what they're watching, as you said. But all of those options require effort. And in today's society, a lot of people, through different reasons, don't feel like they have the time to do that. But the joke of it is, as you've just pointed out, there's deeper connotations to you allowing your child to just have the free reign of the remote control or your laptop for the last 4 hours, and not once did you look over their shoulder and see what they're looking at. You know what I'm saying? This is the only time it's going to be a problem. And I know in this today's society, it's a hard one to have children. It's a hard one to be on call. As we always talk about, you can have a child, and in less time that it takes for you to have a child, the woman's expected to go back to work, and be on cock. Don't even talk about how much time the man's given to be off. It's non-existent. So when we're living in a society like that, suggestions like that seem simple but are very time consuming, that's where it gets to people. But again, we've got to understand the deeper connotations and how beneficial it's going to be in the long run if you monitor these things. Because again, children growing up, they're going to get sexualized through just being by themselves. Like you can have a male child and a female child on a desert island with no telly, and they will still find their way into exploring each other and themselves and get to that sexual point. So to have a constant flow of media now going through and magazines and content in your house that they can readily get available, you got to understand what's going to happen. Yeah, you got to understand when they're playing Grand Theft Auto and you can go and buy a prostitute or rape a girl or do some of these, you got to understand the deeper connotations to this.
I want to ask y'all, what do you think the age is? See, because I'm going here because we tiptoe through the tulips and a lot of black YouTube, we pussyfoot around shit. But I'm just keeping it 1,000. What do you think the age is for the brothers on the panel when you think young black boys begin to jerk off?
I'm gonna say I think that the age is probably around 11 or 12. And to your other point, if I could address a couple of those that you had mentioned. Right. For your first question, I think it's probably about 11 to 12. Once they get into middle school, if they don't already know about it, their peers do, and their peers going to say something to them, and they're going to find out that way. So the unfortunate thing that you are mentioning about, that over sexualization is that the incest does happen more in the black community than we would like to take notice to. Like we'll often say, it's the white community, they have the incest and they do that, but it does happen in our community, and it's very quiet. It's behind closed doors. That door rarely gets opened and talked about, but it is there, unfortunately. But to put it in context, I say all of the sexual degeneracy, whether it be incest, homosexuality, or just over sexualization, all of the sexual degeneracy that black community is experiencing is a symptom of racism until proven otherwise. So as I was saying with the peer groups, the influence of the peer group in the internet is going to play a major role in how the next generation is sexualized. Here's what I mean. When I was younger, I'm 28. When I was younger, it wasn't the magazines and the DVDs, how y'all brothers mentioned. It was more so BET Uncut. They got, the tip drill, and they swiping the credit card, on the girl watching tip drills, watching stuff we didn't have no business watching. So even if you didn't get exposed to it through that, you have a peer group, and kids today still are heavily influenced by their peer groups, as well as the stuff that they're searching on the YouTube and, on the internet, on their phones, on the iPads or tablets. They have access to an entire world of anything that they want to see in search. So their search history is always important if we're being parents that are, keen and paying close attention to our kids. So to connect it back to, the first piece of the conversation, how do we solve this? How do we, come up with a conclusion? If we're raising our kids and they understand right from wrong, they know if they're in a adult-like sexual situation, they know what's wrong. They get that feeling like, look, something isn't right, or I shouldn't be doing this. So we can instill that in them and have open lines of communications with our kids. Our kids won't be afraid, even if they're young black boys, won't be afraid to come and say, Dad, I was in this situation, I shouldn't have, or, being as black men, being open and being able to communicate, have our kids be able to communicate with us, so this doesn't happen behind closed doors, and it ends up being a worse situation.
But you know what, Solvin, we have to be very, very careful with our kids now and what the media is putting out there for them. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she doesn't watch television, but what she does like to watch is the tablet and the various YouTube videos, and I have found more than a few videos that are presented as cartoons or for children, but there's very questionable stuff in there, and they are talking about very questionable stuff. Like they're talking about pregnancy and having a baby, and it's in the format of a cartoon. And if you're not listening and you're not paying attention, your child will be subjected to that. You know, when she was 5, she came to me, and I don't even know how to say it, but my 5-year-old daughter asked me, she asked me, Daddy, does my butt shake when I walk? I almost had a damn heart attack. I like, what the? I like, I like,
Like, how you deal with that? That's tough.
but you know what? But you know, being the type father that I am trying to be, I didn't damn blow up on her. I simply told her, baby, you don't have to worry about that for probably another 20 years, baby. You don't have to worry about that. You know.
I'd have been 100 years. 100 years.
You know, but yeah, I read something earlier about pornographic material that's being slid into the media that we do not expect it to be in. You know, we have to be very careful of that type stuff.
Let me. How old do you think young boys are when they first really get into jacking off and all that kind of stuff? What do you think the age?
I would say around 12, 11, 12, 13, you know, but I know some people that are like teachers, and you know, I get the ages mixed up. I don't know what grade you're in now and how old you are, but I've had middle school teachers tell me, boys sit there in class and jack off all day.
Right.
In middle school. I'm like, hold on now. I don't think I was doing that in damn middle school. But hey, they getting it in middle school now, brothers. I'm telling you.
Yeah, not to put anybody business, but it's been 2 situations since I've been, you know, working in schools that that does happen. You're right.
Now, trust me. I mean, look, from the time I was going to nursery, which is like what, just like 3 or late 4, before I went into normal elementary school, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I was playing Wendy House with girls who were telling me, you know, what to do and wanting to lay down in the bed with me and
right
play out situations. So by the time I was 7, you know, I was kissing girls, I was doing all sorts. And luckily, I've never been abused, but that stint and those little girls who I was playing with at the time, they advanced. I don't want to use the term they abused me, but they definitely accelerated my sexual feelings a lot quicker. So by the time I was 8, 9, you know, I was getting wet dreams, was having boners. You know, I can still remember being in the playground and discussing with my friends about the dick going into the vagina and me saying, are you crazy? What, it goes inside? And you know what I'm saying? Like, but I'm telling you, it's something that I think is happening a lot sooner. Like, I personally would say from the ages of 7, 8, young boys are starting to play with themselves. Like, it might not be what we all know to be masturbating in the fullest sense, but they're definitely touching themselves, and they know that if they twinge themselves in this way, it will feel nice, or it make them feel gooey inside, whatever. But trust me, it's beginning from early.
And
you're right.
The reason why I brought this up, because I want us to deal with the hard shit, and I want the moms to understand this. Like, we were young, and you found that porn in the crib. Like I said, you found Sugar Bush 14, and you turned it on. And you know, when you're that young, and you're looking at these porn magazines and these different things, and you're in the house, and you're getting that rush and that feeling down there. Now as an adult, I get the feeling I just go upstairs and go get with the wife. But when I'm like 11 or 9, and I get that feeling, I don't know what that feeling is. All I know is it needs to be relieved, or it needs to be. And what happens is, the reason why, and I wouldn't even call incest, because I don't think that the kids are having full intercourse sex, but they're grinding on each other. They're doing things and experimenting things that they saw on each other. Now, by the grace of the Most High, some of them, as they get older, recognize that it's wrong and they stop. Sometimes it goes all the way. But I'm just telling you, be careful what our young boys is watching. I want to I'll let you go ahead and I'm gonna read some more of this because I know you want to say something.
Oh, yeah, but I definitely want to give a shout out to what brother Richie's saying about how young it damn starts, because him saying that made me think back to how long I had been rubbing on damn baby doll titties. You know, my little sisters would have, Barbie dolls, and I would damn take the damn shirts off and get the damn rub it on the damn titties and shit. I don't know why, but here I am. I'm like 3, 4. I'm 3, 4. Don't even know what the hell titties
Right.
are, but I'm damn rubbing on damn titties because it damn does something to me. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that shit starts early, and we damn started hunting on little girls in the damn neighborhood. I think I've been hunting since I could walk, man. I've been hunting since 5, 6, 7. Definitely 7. Shoot, we were trying to do it all, but you couldn't really do it all then. I don't, and something that we're not taking into account is how you learn a lot of this stuff from older kids. Growing up, I'm 44. Growing up, you would have your little 6, 7 year olds playing, then a little bit further down the block, or you'd have like 11, 12, 13 year olds and your 15, 16, 17 year olds. We were all pretty much on the same block, and from time to time we would have interaction. So we actually learned a lot of things from the older kids coming down, talking with us, bothering with us, and doing things that they probably shouldn't have done. So I do remember learning a lot of stuff
Those
from
older
them.
kids started out where we were, and then they just never stopped. So they kept perpetuating it. So what happens is, um, you have these kids that's being sexually molested, but then you have these kids that's exposed to certain things. So we gotta just pay attention to it from all angles. I want to read this. The myth that black boys can't be sexually used or abused, and if someone is, he can never be a real man. Everyone absorbs the myth that black males aren't victims. To some extent, it's central to masculine gender socialization, and boys pick up on it at very early in life. This myth implies that a boy or a man who has been sexually used or abused will never be a real man. Our society expects males to be able to protect themselves. Successful men are depicted as never being vulnerable, either physically or emotionally. Whether you agree with the definition of masculinity or not, boys are not men. They are children. They are weaker and more vulnerable than those who sexually abuse or exploit them, who use their greater size, strength, and knowledge to manipulate or coerce boys into unwanted sexual experiences and staying silent. This is usually done from the position of authority. Coach, yeah, watch those coaches, teachers, religious leaders, status, older cousins, admired athlete, social leader, using whatever means are available to reduce resistance, such as attention, special privileges, money, and other gifts, promises, and bribes, and even outright threats. What happens? Okay, what happens? What happens to any of us as children does not need to define us as adults. It is important to remember that 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18, and that those boys can grow up to be strong, powerful, courageous, and healthy men. Examples are found in our male survivor stories sections that are many others out there. So these these as I go down, I'm not going to read them all, but some of these are the myths. I want to find the one when they say about boys being uh, uh, physically touched by women.
George, I'm glad that in my older age that I can more properly handle a situation of a guy telling me something happened to him like that, because I can think back to when I was 20 and how ignorant I was, and us other guys were. Imagine a guy telling you something like that something happened to him, and we would have all type jokes or stuff like a damn manhood took and stuff of that nature. But now at my older age, I realize that there's like we were talking about earlier. There's a certain tone that we must take when we speak to guys, and we must understand, first of all, that myth about your manhood being taken. When you're a damn boy, you don't even have manhood yet. But I was trying to give you some time to get to the
Yeah,
other one that you
yeah.
want to get to.
I'm gonna read 3 and then 6. Now, this first one is the myth that sexual abuse is less harmful to boys than girls. Uh,
Mhm.
most studies show that the long-term effects of sexual abuse and assault can be quite damaging for both males and females. Remember that I alluded to this because we can see the trajectory for females of them being abused coming into teenagehood, adulthood. You can still see that the dysfunction. One large study conducted by the U.S. Centers of Disease and Control found that the sexual abuse of boys were more likely to involve penetration of some kind, which is associated with greater psychological harm. The harm caused by sexual abuse or assault mostly depends on the things not determined by gender, including the abuser's identity, the duration of the abuse, whether the child told anyone at the time, and if so, whether the child was believed and helped. Many boys suffer harm because adults who could believe them and help are reluctant or refuse to acknowledge what happened and the harm it caused. This increases the harm, especially the shame felt by boys and men, and leads many to believe they have to tough it out on their own. This is where the aggressive, hyper-masculine 90s behavior come from. I'm talking about cities, Chicago, 900 homicides, Philadelphia 500, California 2000, New York 2500, the hyper masculine era. I'll blow a nigga head off and all. See, we just think that this was the crap era, but we're not attributing it the dysfunctions that's going on behind closed doors in these dark rooms that's bringing about this fucking behavior. We're not. So it says this increases the harm, especially the shame felt by boys and men, and leads many to believe that they have to tough it out on their own. And that, of course, makes it harder to seek help in the midst of the abuse or even years after when help is needed. So that's just one aspect of how boys have to deal with it because society tells boys to get over certain things. You might have a boy that's crying out to in pain, and society tell him, "Oh man, shut the hell up, man. You sound like a bitch. You're being weak." Because he's not just gonna come out and say, "Hey, I've been raped. I've been raped." He might come out and always he might be crying and whining about shit all the time, over emotional. And society tell him, "Man, stop crying, stop bitching." And either he kills somebody or he commits suicide. And then you find out after the fact, oh shit, I didn't understand that this shit happened to him. Because we live in a society where you can't come out and just say, "Hey, I've been raped." That is it's just not the society that we live in, and all the shit that we're under in the system. That's just not feasible for a black man to come out and just say some shit like that. Then he can't take that back. What y'all think about that?
It's a fact.
Yeah,
No one's rewarded for talking.
Yeah.
As you said, there's no safe place to have these conversations because, again, in amongst all the other stresses, strains, and peer pressures of life, there's no compassion anymore. That's one of the key points and parts of the human psyche that suffered throughout this time frame that we're living in. When it comes to capitalism and all these factors, they don't allow for this compassion that's needed to deal with these issues.
Do y'all think? Let me ask y'all a question. Let's deal with the R. Kelly thing for just a brief second, right? And men like R. Kelly when he tells a story about him being sexually molested at a very young age. Do you think that when you got young boys that are sexually molested and they don't have an avenue or a support group that they can come and sit down and talk to, do you think that that in turn makes them actually go back to the perpetrator for that? What's the word I want? Do you think that that makes them turn back to the perpetrator for that type of guidance or that type of things that they should be getting from the protector and not the perpetrator? Do you think it makes them turn right back into the perpetrator?
Yeah, I think with his experience, that it's sort of like when they do this, the sexual abuse, it's kind of like they pass along the poison to the next person, and it'll happen to them, and then they abuse. So like the evidence is overwhelming, the amount of people that are sexually abused themselves and then end up sexually abusing somebody else. It's like just passing off the poison and keep passing it off. So that the fact that he experienced something like that is no surprise that he would turn around and do the same thing to everybody else. Now, as it pertains, I know he was doing that to women, but as it pertains to men going through this experience, like he might have went through, whether it happened or not, I won't get into, but let's just take it on surface level. That let's say it did happen to him. A lot of times, it was interesting in that article you had mentioned that is that people are reluctant to help the men because there's a certain aspect of vulnerability that a man has to take by even coming out and saying something like that.
Stay right there, because I want you to speak to that real quick. I'm going to put this in there. Do you think that because we don't have a support system for boys that feel comfortable to speak, when that boy is violated by that man, do you think because we don't have that support system, he's young and immature in his way of thinking, that he actually turns right back into the arms of his perpetrator?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because the perpetrator sets the stage that they are here to help. That even if you did speak out, nobody's going to believe you. They take that dominating role over the person and they manipulate them. They take advantage of them. So if they don't have a support system to go to, the person will say, well, it's nothing wrong with it. Or they end up confiding into the very same person who's abusing them. It could be reminiscent of Stockholm syndrome or any of those other things, amongst the constant abuse that people are getting. So then they end up inevitably turning to the abuser. So
exactly.
Like using that phenomenon, and as the man, which would really have to happen is that the man would have to at least, let me deal with it this way. If us as a community, let's take a community look at it, is that if we don't shame the type of people like the brother DZ had mentioned, that at some points we might laugh at people who come out about it. So if we don't have the shame associated with people coming out, I think we could build up a space that a network could be established that people would feel comfortable coming out and saying, I had this experience, and we won't look at it like, man, so what? You had sex, like that's a good thing. Like that's what's making you a man. Like if we take out that shame aspect, we probably could have a network that people could go to and talk about it. Because let's think about it this way. Let's say we had that support system and it's set up, but the stigma is still attached to what it means for a man that experienced some sexual abuse. If they still going to see you as a homosexual or still see you as weak and the stigma's still there, nobody's going to go to that support group, unfortunately. So we got to kind of take a community look at large as how we deal with it and see the people who are victimized from this if we truly want Black men to heal from the experience.
George, speaking on what you were just asking, I think that, strangely, there is a type of bond that is formed between, I don't know what to label, the predator and the victim. A lot of times, I've seen a couple of instances, and there's one instance that we may have, if people pay attention, they may have noticed on YouTube. There's one instance where, there's a predator and there is basically a victim. And if you pay attention to it, it seems to be some type of bond there, as twisted as it may be, in regards to your question. I think that there is some type of bond that is formed to where the victim may actually go back to the predator.
Yeah, what you think about that, Richie?
First of all, hurt people, innit? Let's just remember that. When you are distressed and confused about why something has happened, then you're going to play that out in your life. That's just a given. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it's just as simple as that. Really, it's gonna keep going, and you're gonna see it play out even more. But as the brother said, it's almost a form of Stockholm syndrome, where that can happen, where you know. And again, look, we've already dealt with the fact that abusive situations start off with psychological grooming. So once you get into that, there's going to be a connection. There's key words, there's key things. It's already a situation that, again, is mostly being groomed to kept secret. So there is a shared, if not a very unhealthy relationship being put into place the moment you do start to abuse someone, and it's not a one-way situation. Yeah, the moment it turns into a continuous ongoing situation, then there's psychological grooming going on. So once that happens, now that person, the victim, is open to all sorts of influences, including other influences from their abuser. And especially if that abuser comes from an inner circle, family, friends, whatever, then most definitely there can be this situation where it's causing a psychosis where on one hand, you despise the person for what they've done to you, but on the other hand, you still view them as a part of your family, your circle. And because everyone else may not be privy to it, they're playing out this psychosis in front of you, which you only have the option to play along with it or spill the beans. So unless you're gonna spill the beans, you now have to play along with this sickening fiction. So after a while, it becomes second nature. This is, and as we talked about, if there's generational abuse, that could be going on for 10, 20 years. As you said, you're going to family events, the person's there. You're going to see friends, the person's there. You know what I'm saying? You need to buy stuff, like the person's there. That's a level in which it creates a mad psychosis. And again, you find yourself acting almost separate from yourself, in the sense that you're looking at yourself carry out behaviors that just don't make sense. Yeah, it does happen all the time.
I agree. I want to do this. Let's do this, because it's a lot of hypocrisy I see in the black community, especially when it comes to our brothers. And I got a real bad problem with this right here, man. And I spoke about this last week on O'Shea channel on the Rumble. Like, this shit right here burns me up, man. The myth that if a female used or abused a boy, he was lucky. And if he doesn't feel the same way, there's something wrong with him. I got a real bad problem with this. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna read this, and I want y'all to really listen to this, man. The myth, like several of the others, come from the image of masculinity that boys learn from very early. It says not only that males can be sexually abused, but that any sexual experience with girls and women, especially older ones, is evidence that he's a real man. Again, the confusion comes from focusing on the sexual impact rather than the abusive one, the exploitation and betrayal by a more powerful, trusted, and admired person who can be a child or adult. In reality, premature, coerced, and otherwise abusive and exploitative sexual experiences are never positive. Whenever they are imposed by an older sister of a friend, baby sitter, neighbor, aunt, mother, or any female in a position of power over a boy. At a minimum, they cause confusion and insecurity. They almost always harm boys and men's capacities to trust and intimacy. And brother Simple the Peace spoke about that. He spoke about what happened to him when he was young and what they did, and how he has never been able to reconcile that being violated by older women when he was a child. He spoke openly about that. A gay man who experienced sexual arousal when abused by a female may wonder whether it means that he is actually straight, or wonder what it means that he was chosen by a woman or older girl. Being sexually used and abused, whether male or females, can cause a variety of other emotional and psychological problems. However, boys and men often don't recognize the connection between what happened and their later problems. And this is what I spoke about men jumping from bed to bed, searching for a feeling or something from a woman that don't exist. Because they got that euphoria at a young age. It's like a crackhead hitting that pipe for the first time, and for 30 years he's searching for that first high. To be used as a sexual object by a more powerful person, or a male or female, is never a good thing and can cause lasting harm. Now, I want people to understand something. The 25-year-old school teacher sucking on your 13-year-old boy's penis is not fucking good. That's not a badge of honor. That's nothing to be proud of. You don't want your sons who is not yet ready for that kind of experience, for that type of dopamine feeling that he doesn't understand, but as he begins to grow, a lot of times you'll see boys from 9 to about 12 sprout up, and then from 13 to 17 as they begin to hit puberty. But when you got boys that 9 to 12 stage, they begin to get little hair down there. They begin to have little feelings down there. They're waking up with rock hard erections, and they're going to pee, and they can't even pee straight. They pee all over the toilet seat on the floor because the trajectory of that aim is becoming strong. And they're getting those feelings, but they have yet to understand what that is. And when a grown female comes and violates that innocence, and you sitting there giving him a high five, talking about he wasn't ready for that. He hasn't gone through his rites of passage as a man. He doesn't, man, this thing right here, when I hear niggas, like, yeah, my son ain't gonna be gay. That's not cool. Why would an older woman want to even suck on a boy? He doesn't have a dick yet, he has a penis. Why does she want to? Why is she even aroused by a little boy? And then when he's a boy, he's not thinking about a condom. He's not mentally there yet. All he knows, he has this feeling, and he has to get a release.
Well, and you listen, let me say this. You think it means happy days, my son is heterosexual, but because it's an abusive situation, later on when he tries to have real life heterosexual relationships, he might not be able to maintain, and next minute he's telling you he's on that gay shit. So you stay there giving your son a high five. That shit might not work out how you thought it would in the next 10 years. I'll tell you that right now.
Man, we don't understand the damage that this does. And this is why you see boys in ninth grade, junior high school, they out there. They've been molested by older girls. Who the fuck you think they go back and practice it on? Your daughters, your young daughters.
And that's a fact. And we kind of looking at it, you brothers are right, as sort of this rite of passage. And I think even when the Lil Wayne, he described a similar experience some years ago, with the older woman, and he was telling it in a joking way, like it was something cool, like it was something good. And you saying like that's exactly what the problematic nature of it is. So I think as Black men, if we establish what it is to be a man, because this type of experience of having sex and over sexualization at a young age is usually seen as a validation of manhood. Like, okay, you on your way. That's your rite of passage. You becoming a young man from being exposed to sex, when in reality, as y'all are mentioned, it could end up being very detrimental or shut them out completely from being a productive member of the Black community. So it's a lot of nuances and a lot of layers that we got to be careful of the messages that we're giving off to the next generation, specifically as it pertains to something like sex, which is so powerful. It has the ability to to keep producing more offspring. Like it's a very powerful thing that we can't just toy around and play with, because that'll end up being a detrimental aspect of society. But what I did want to say, I gotta wrap it up soon. Get back to being a father. Get back to changing diapers and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you having me on, and peace to the brothers on the panel. And next time you're doing something, man, just shoot me an email. We can always chop it up and build.
Coming back tomorrow. Make
Most
sure you
definitely.
make sure you're still listening, because I'm gonna say this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna listen off air.
When you got a brother like the brother that's solving the race problem is 28. You got a lot of young brothers that may watch some of this video, see this video. I want y'all to understand something. The reason why black boys and the black family and black men are under attack, and they over sexualize black boys. Remember, I said you carry the seed of forever inside of you. And when you violate that boy before he makes his transition to understanding manhood and what a man is, and he's not able to go through a rites of passage who was taught to him by his father, who was taught to him by his father, where you have a culture and a generation that's being passed down that's teaching this man what boyhood is. When you interrupt that, you take that future leader of a community and you destroy him. You have him on TV with lyrics saying, "Your wife is my baby mama." You have him running around having sex in the community without a care of taking care of babies. He may not be a homosexual, but you created a predator on his own people because you violated his innocence before he went through his rites of passage. But y'all don't get it. Y'all don't really understand what a black male leader is. Before he becomes a black man, he was a boy. And he has to be raised properly into understanding what leadership is and knighted into being a leader in the community. And being a leader in the community is understanding not just your brain inside your head, but also that head below. You have to have discipline. And when you are over-sexualized and you are violated, you lose that discipline. And you can never have the ability to hold down a family. You're chasing cars and bitches and hoes and money, and you want the chicks to bust it wide open because you're chasing that euphoria. You're chasing that high that you got when you was violated. Because most likely when you were violated by an older woman that was way much more experienced than that little 17-year-old girl that's trying to give you head for the first time. See, we like to play these games. I don't pussyfoot or tiptoe through the tulips. I'm gonna tell you the real. This is why they don't want you to know about black boys being molested, because black boys are supposed to be the saviors of the community. And when you got black boys violated and you got black boys running wild, you got to destroy community. They know what the fuck they doing, Richie. This is not rocket science, man.
Legacy killers. That's what it's about. Legacy killing. Yeah. Remember, having children is supposed to be you passing on the best parts of you and creating a 2.5 version of yourself. That's what it's supposed to be about. So when you're not doing that process to the best of your ability, when you're squandering it or having children with people who are not ready or not on the same mind state, when you're doing it too early, or as George said, when you're being abused to the level that now you can't even be productive enough to even court and have a person with you full time, that's legacy killing. They're taking you out generationally. So when you talk about economics and generational wealth, that shit's never happening until these problems here are rectified, until the black family is healed and continues to be revered and looked at as the precious gem that it is, and the beginning of you learning all of the qualities and aspects that you need to be out on these streets as a productive male. Until we get this, it's a wrap. Not in our guan, not in our build. There's no nation building. Yeah, we got to understand this fact. You're not getting out of it.
And see, this is my last page that I'm gonna read, and this is a very important page. So I hope you guys stay and you watch this, and this is very important. We're gonna get out of here in about the next 25 minutes. I really want to say this: young girls are supposed to be protected. Young boys are supposed to be protected and risen up through a rites of passage of what leadership is. And when you take that boy and you violate him. Man. I'm gonna tell you, my daddy told me something a long time ago. He used to let my sisters get away with every fucking thing, man. He was hard on me. And I used to hate that. And one day, man, he grabbed me by my chin and said, look at me, boy, look at me right now. He said, you know why I treat them differently than I treat you? Because you're going to be responsible for a family one day. You're going to have to walk with your chin up and your chest out in the air, even when you don't want to, even when you don't feel the strength to. You still going to have to do it because you're going to be responsible for boys and children and a wife. So I'm this way on you. You may not understand it, but you will understand one day. And I understand what he meant. As a leader, I got to lead even when I don't want to. I gotta stand at the front even when I don't got the strength to even stand. I still gotta stand. So when you take a fucking boy, man, y'all just don't understand. And you wonder why our communities are the way that they are. Because the very boys that's coming through your womb, that's coming through, that's supposed to protect you, before they even get a chance to even understand what manhood is, they are already taken out. And so now what you see is a bunch of grown men disguised as adults. I mean, a bunch of children walking around disguised as adults. I can't even say it. A bunch of grown men disguised as children. You see a bunch of grown men who are really still children. That's what you see, because they never ever got over their childhood, and all they can do is blame women and blame everybody else for their shortcomings, because they don't want to tell you to come. They don't want to come out and tell you things that's happened to them. So they sit on YouTube for 7 hours a day, basically saying, "Somebody please come help me. I got undiagnosed trauma that's never been dealt with, and I don't have the mental capacity as a man to figure out ways to remedy my problem." See, because when you go through a rites of passage as a man, and you're raised up by men, men teach you how to use your mind and your intellect to remedy your problem. When you didn't have that, the only thing you could do is sit and cry. And these are the things that's going on. We're running wild in the community with no sense of what's the end game, Richie, in the community for these young guys. What's the end game? There is no end game. It's just ongoing. Ask the young guys out in the street selling the cocaine, getting money, banging chicks. Ain't no end game. I don't tell you, man, I ain't gonna live till I'm 25 anyway. So I'm gonna do all that now. There is no end game.
That's it. When it goes back to the first paragraph, they have a gloomy outlook. They're not seeing anything positive. They're looking through tainted eyes now. So there's no future now.
So I'm not marginalizing young girls being molested. What I'm trying to say to the family is, when you take that young boy who is supposed to be trained up to be the protector and the leader, and you destroy him, he will never see the beauty, the love, or the importance of his counterpart, that black woman. He will always over-sexualize her because that's all he knows. Because he needs her to bust it open. He want a fat ass. He needs to get in. He has no female friends. Every woman he encounters, he has to have sex with. Because he was violated. He was traumatized. He didn't go through that rites of passage. He wasn't raised up into that manhood to understand what manhood is. So now when you got a group of men in the community that's behaving like that, the community is destroyed. And this is why you have to protect your daughters, but you have to protect your sons and raise them up in ways that they would know what their roles are. Because a destroyed man is a destroyed community. But y'all not hearing me, man. See, because people will hear this and like, oh, he's marginalizing women and saying that the man's is more important. I don't want nobody to take to listen to this and take that from what I'm saying. I need you black women to understand the boys that comes out of your womb, the importance of the way he's raised. White supremacy is spending generations of destroying your sons. He will let you advance in his job market, but he will kill your son. He will put him in prison. He will give him his drugs. He will give him immunizations that's giving him autism. MMR vaccinations. He would do all these different things to neutralize your sons from being raised up to being kings, where he can take back what's been taken from his mama and his father. They don't want that. So they over-sexualize your sons, and they're doing it with these cartoons right in front of your face. They're doing it with the porn, downloading that into his mind that he's going to freak on his sisters. Be very fucking careful with your sons. We got to wake up, man. We got to wake up, man. Everything. Black girls rock, black girls this. Where's the black boys? We're dropping the ball, man. We're dropping the ball. You watch black YouTube and you see grown men crying like children. They need a hug. They need somebody to love them in the right way. You ask the average black boy who his grandfather was, and he don't even know. And you think that he's functioning right? Come on, man. Come on. I'm going to read some of this before we get out of here. I want y'all to... Now, because you know, Richie, I got to bring it back to the PTSD.
That's it.
Yeah, I got to bring... You there, Ali, still?
Still here, bro.
Okay. Yeah, I want to bring this back. I saved this one for last, because I want to bring this back to the PTSD, because you know we deal with this PTSD, and we got another video coming on that on the Black family. All right. There are various types of traumatic events that can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. Sexual abuse is a particularly sinister type of trauma because of the shame it instills in the victims. With childhood sexual abuse, victims are often too young to know how to express what's happening and seek help. When not properly treated, this can result in a lifetime of PTSD, depression, and anxiety. The trauma that results from sexual abuse is a syndrome that affects not just the victim and their family, but all of our society. What was I just speaking about? When you got a black boy and you take him and you violate him, and he no longer knows his purpose, but he carries that seed inside of him. See, I want y'all to remember, a woman can only have one baby a year. A boy can make 100 babies in a year. So when you take that black boy and you put him in a system of dysfunction without understanding what his true purpose is, he will be destructive amongst the land. And white supremacy knows that, and they got our young boys on a trajectory of being destructive to themselves and everything that they touch, because they are violated. The trauma that results from, because sexual abuse, molestation, and rape are such shame-filled concepts, our culture tends to suppress information about them. According to trialdrama.org, in the U.S., 1 out of 3 females, and now it's 1 out of 5 males, have been victims of sexual abuse before the age of 18 years. And according to the American Academy of Expert in Traumatic Stress, AAETS, 30% of all male children are molested in 30. Look at this shit, man. 30% of all male children are molested in some way, compared to 40% of females. Some of the most startling statistics unearthed during research into sexual abuse are that children are 3 times as likely to be victims of rape than adults, and stranger abuse constitutes by far the minority of cases. It is more likely for a child to experience sexual abuse at the hands of a family member or other supposedly trustworthy adult. Sexual abuse is truly is a truly demonic democratic issue. It affects children and adults across ethnic, social, economic, education, religious, and regional lines. Exactly what constitutes sexual abuse? The Incest Survivors Resource Network. See, I'm reading all this kind of stuff because somebody may come across these things that may be having these things happen to them and they don't know who to turn to. So I have to read this whole page because I hope by the grace of the Most High that I can reach somebody that this may be happening to, and they don't have anybody to turn to, and they can go get the help they need. So this isn't just for us. This is for when it's go up to YouTube. Those of you that may see this, George Macon is thinking about you. The Incest Survivors Resource Network states that the erotic use of a child, whether physically or emotionally, is sexual exploitation. So some of that you see when you got these young girls in these little pageants, dressing them up, putting makeup on them. And man, listen, it's the fullest meaning of the term, even if no bodily contact is ever made. It is important to notice this clause about no sexual contact. Often victims of sexual abuse will try to downplay the experience by saying that it wasn't that bad. It's vital to recognize that abuse comes in many shapes, colors, and sizes, and that all abuse is bad. Outcomes of sexual abuse. Outcomes of sexual abuse. By far, the most common effect of sexual abuse is post-traumatic stress disorder. Symptoms can extend far into adulthood and can include withdrawn behavior, reenactment of the traumatic events, avoidance of circumstances that remind one of the event, and psychological hyper reactivity. We see it a lot of times in women, but I think a lot of times we see it act out in boys in violence. Another legacy of sexual abuse is that children abused at an early age often become hypersexualized or sexually reactive. Issues of promiscuity and poor self-esteem, and unfortunately common reactions to early sexual abuse. Substance abuse is a common outcome of sexual abuse. In fact, according to the AAETS, specialists in the addiction field, alcohol, drugs, and eating disorders estimate up to 90% of their patients have known history of this. Now I'm gonna read this last thing. These are, and then I'm gonna let the brothers on the panel go in off of what we just read. Specific symptoms of sexual abuse: withdrawal and mistrust of adults. Now, how many times y'all hear kids saying, fuck you, you ain't my old head. I'm tired of you old niggas. Y'all wasn't never there for us. We hear that all the time. Man, fuck y'all old crackhead, y'all old niggas. Suicide. Difficulty relating to others, accepting sexual, oh, come on, man. Difficulty relating to others, accepting sexual or seductive ways. And you see that play out a lot. Man, fuck, I ain't got time to be talking to that bitch. I just want the ass. You see a lot of girls, man, she can fuck you and you can make her come 1,000 times. And when you leave, she will never call you again. She just had to release that. We see it play out. Unusual interest or avoidance of all things sexual or physical. Sleeping problems, nightmares, fears of going to bed. Frequent accidents or self-injurious behavior. Refusal to go to school or to the doctor or home. Secretiveness or unusual aggressiveness. Sexual components to drawing and games. Neurotic reactions, obsession, compulsiveness, phobias. Habit disorders, biting or rocking. Unusual sexual knowledge or behavior. Prostitution, forced sexual acts on other children. Extreme fear of being touched. Unwillingness to submit to physical examinations. This is the last part. Studies have shown that children who experience sexual abuse tend to recover quicker and with better results if they have supportive, caring adult, ideally a parent, consistently in their life. It is crucial for every victim of sexual abuse to seek counseling to decrease or to prevent PTSD symptoms, since 35% of children of child sexual abuser were once abused, higher in males. Counseling might help to reduce the possibility of a victim repeating the abusive pattern. That's it right there. What do you guys think about that, man?
More reasons why it needs to be dealt with, because again, it's going to have bigger and wider ramifications for your ongoing problem solving centers of your brain. So if you think it's only going to affect you in your relationships, you're wrong. It's going to really fuck up your outlook on everything. So again, if we believe that we can nation build in some way as black people without dealing with this issue, again, we're mistaken. It's uncomfortable, but we're going to have to deal with it if we're going to move forward and be able to plan anything of worth.
Yeah, I agree. And this is why I did this with boys, because if we're going to move forward and we're going to break this cycle with black boys, we're going to break this cycle with black boys. We're going to have to get to a place where we're going to have to begin to talk about this. Look at this. Look at me. Can y'all see it?
Yeah, see it.
At the party with my boys Saturday. But see, I'm showing this because when you see like these type of young boys, like, damn, hold on. When you see these type of young boys at this type of like this young ripe age, they gotta be protected. And they gotta know that they protected. And they gotta be led. They gotta know that they're gonna be rulers and they're gonna be kings. They're gonna come out here and compete. These boys, my nephews, they're gonna have to know. They're gonna have to know that they are great. They are kings, and they carry the seed of forever inside of them. And they cannot go around just spilling that anywhere without a care in the world. They have to understand the gift that they've been given to them by nature. And they have the ability to put life inside a woman that gives birth to it. And you cannot just plant seeds and just run all over the place without a care in the world. You are causing destruction amongst the land. We have to protect these boys. And our boys are not being protected. They are not being protected. And it's imperative that we protect these babies when they're young like that, because of the responsibility that they have to the women and children. These boys that are growing up now say, I'm not getting married. Fuck the black community. I have no responsibility. But when you listen to them talk like that, just go deep inside and look into them, and you'll see that pain. You'll see that violation. You'll see it. Because a man, a boy by nature, is a protector. By nature, by nature, he's a protector. And when he loses that ability to want to protect, you got to really, really, really look inside. You got to go deep inside and find out what it is that he's holding on to. What has been taken from him that's making him speak this way now. And these are the things that we got to understand. We are raising kings and soldiers, man. You see these women on the front line every time something pop off. Why do you think these black boys ain't on the front line? See, that's what I'm saying. We have to learn how to pinpoint and really be able to see what's going on with our boys, because it's very important. The boys are very important. Fuck that. You talk about your red bottoms, your Benz, your $100,000 you got in the bank. A black boy is way more important than that when you put things in its proper context. So what? You got 100,000 in the bank. He ain't worth more than that black little boy walking down the street right now that's going to be responsible for protecting the community. Because when your son gets shot coming home from school, and he may be shot by that boy, because that boy wasn't protected. It's a connection that's connected to the all. We're all responsible to each other. And if you're not protecting these boys and teaching them who they are, you're going to continue to get what you get. Black mothers crying and black boys dying. Perpetuated by the innocence being taken from them at a very young age, because you failed to want to talk about it, because you didn't want nobody criticizing you for your failure as a parent. No more of that. We have to be responsible. Peace, brother Moses. My brother just came in. Brother, come talk to the people.
Peace, brother. You know, I had to come just to see if Black Ice was on, man. He been dormant for a while, man. He been hiding out, man. Where you been, brother Rich?
I know. It's all business. Georgia's been hearing from me though during the daytime, but yeah, we back on this thing.
Yes, sir. And then who's that? DZ Ali?
Yeah, right here, bro.
Yeah, we just talking. Yeah, we talking about the molestation in black boys and the importance of protecting black boys and sending black boys through a rites of passage. A lot of times we talk about the molestation of black girls, but we don't. But when we talk about black men should be protecting the community, we talk about black men should be leaderships. When you get these boys are violated at a very young age, they lose that thought process of power or what leadership is. We read statistics. I've shown the behavioral patterns that we can look for. And I'm just telling my sisters, my black queens, you're giving birth to kings. You need to be in his ear every night, telling him how great he is, telling him that he's going to be great, raising him to win, raising him to be a provider, raising him to be strong. Don't coddle him. Don't get up and wash his dishes. Make him wash his own dishes. Don't do everything for him. Make him earn that game. Make him work to it. And I'm saying this to a lot of sisters because a lot of you are single moms. So we got to understand we at war, and we got to raise up soldiers. What do you think that white woman is telling these race soldiers out here that's running wild? They're coming out of the wombs of white women. What do you think that white woman is saying to her boys? Don't lose this kingdom. Stay in power. You're great. Don't tell the boy you're just like your daddy because he wasn't there. Don't tell him that. Raise him up to be strong.
You want a surefire way to raise a lapdog? Somebody who's going to grow up and be submissive and passive, who can't stand up in a boardroom meeting and assert himself. Somebody who has to walk around on eggshells when they're walking through, the halls of corporate America or even through the classroom. Somebody who's going to sit in that back corner and not get that education rather than sitting in the front corner, sitting right up there up front and questioning the teacher. You want to know a good way to have that person who's just going to bow down and be submissive to his woman and not able to stand up, not want to pay the bills, not want to get the car and the transportation and everything. A good way to do so is to not tell him and not set that expectation of what black male leadership looks like, to not give him the expectation or the discipline to understand those goals. From the classroom to the boardroom to treating his woman, there's an expectation of the black man. And that's going to come from his mother because he's more receptive to him. Now, the father can be a discipline. He could put that hand of law down. He can be the example. But when that son needs his soul coddled, when he needs that nurturing, guess where he goes? Guess where he's going to go to? And if you're a single mother, you got that. If you're a single mother, you got that opportunity. It's a blessing and it's a curse because he's gonna get hard-headed. He's gonna be just like he gonna go through his rebellious stage. He's gonna smell himself. He's gonna need his deodorant, but he still needs to feel handsome when he's around his mother. And he still needs to know that his looks are just one part of the tool that he has to offer the world. His mind, that's gonna be the big one. And in order to protect his mind, you got to equip him. You can't just have him doing push-ups, doing the physical push-ups just to get his chest strong and his arms strong, just to give him good posture. Yeah, that's one part of it. But is his mind going to be strong? Has his mind really been disciplined with the language, the communication of what love looks like, of what leadership looks like? Hey, I know you probably went through that. So let me catch back up. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. We just was talking about the rites of passage of young boys and how they're being led. And then we went over the molestation of boys and how they're being violated. So we covered many different issues. Today we went in on black boys. We didn't talk too much about black girls. Today was just the topic of black boys. And if you look at sexual molestation, would you say, Richie? I mean, Ali?
Nothing, bro. That's my wife.
Oh, you in trouble. When you see the title, Sexual Molestation of Black Boys, the Silent Cry in the Dark Room. Because a lot of our boys are crying in that dark room and nobody's opening up the door to come in there. So when you see a lot of us perpetuating violence on each other, you see a lot of us in black YouTube blaming black women for everything and having 7-hour live streams, just talking about pain and not being chosen and it's not building, it's not using your intellect, using your mind as to how to remedy your problem, which you will learn from your fathers and grandfathers through that rites of passage of what manhood is. We've lost that. And when you violate a young boy at a very young age, man, you set him on a trajectory of just doom and gloom and what you see today. That's why I said, listen to the lyrics in the rap songs that was going on in the 90s. Because this ain't just the young people. Look at what was going on in the 90s with the rap songs and all the different things of what we were saying. It is a record for killing the most niggas and then I'm breaking it. Put it in your mouth and all of that shit was all symptoms of dysfunction. AMG, ain't nothing like black pussy on my dick and all that stuff. I'm being raw and uncut with it. All that stuff, we would say it like it was nothing. But when you really go back and then you find out that, wait a minute, 1 out of 5 boys are molested before the age of 18 and 1 out of 3 girls. Where's all the sexual promiscuity? Man, where's this this stuff coming from? So now we talk about the dysfunction of the black community, but we don't want to really deal. We don't want to get dirty. See, I got dirty today. We don't really want to get dirty and get ugly, cause then you got to relive shit that you don't put behind you, that you thought you put behind you, but it weighs out in your behavior and everything that you do. You can't keep successful relationships, brothers. You got 5 and 7, 6, 7 baby moms because you just spill seeds everywhere without a care in the world. Every girl you see, you just got to get it. You got to bust it open. You need that euphoria. You need that high. You got to release that because you have no sexual discipline. Your morale is low because you've been violated and nobody ever got you back straight because there was no avenues for you to go and sit and say, hey, when I was 12, I was raped. Who the fuck can you go and say this stuff to? You're frowned upon. And then we got a society where I disagree with homosexuality, but we still shame molestation victims in this country, especially in the black community. So how can we ever get to the gist of fixing black boys if we shame molestation victims? You say you want strong soldiers. You say you want black men standing at the doorstep of the community, but you shame molestation victims. And 1 out of 5 black boys are molested before the age of 18. So how the fuck can you want strong black boys, but then you shame molestation victims? How do you want it? What are we doing here? So as we begin to close out, I want Brother Ali to have some closeout words, and then we go to Moses and then Richie.
All right, peace, brother, peace. This has been another wonderful conversation, another thought-provoking conversation, a much-needed conversation. As Brother George and Brother Richie and solving the race problem, and Brother Moses and all of us have said, you can't build a nation when the heads of your nation have been hurt and they are not being raised properly. And we have the people that we are up against. They have think tanks where they talk about stuff as such as what we are discussing now. They talk about this type of stuff and other things that will hold our people back. They know that if you kill the head, the body's going to die. And, like it or not, black men are the head of our community. If you kill or make dysfunctional the black man, the entire black community will die and suffer. And it is up to us to have these conversations to at least try and counter what is being thrown at us so that we can try and maintain our communities and heal our communities so that we can continue to compete against our competitors and until one day it turns around. So brothers and sisters, remember to have sympathy and empathy for your brothers. We always have discussions about our ladies and our young ladies, but we can't forget the young men, the young brothers. We aren't superhuman. We aren't androids. We have feelings, So I just ask that we take that into account. I'd like to thank the Brother George, the Brother Richie, the Brother Moses, and solving the race problem for another beautiful conversation. I'd like to say peace to all of the chat and later.
Thanks, Ali. You there, Moses?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you came in late. So yeah.
I have personal experience and a vested interest in this topic. Sorry, am I echoing?
No, you good, bro.
Oh, okay. So my closing words would be, when you open up, when you get a little dirty, Brother George, you open up some wounds, and that balm that we need sometimes isn't a discussion. And so it's also beholden upon each individual who hears these messages to understand that they may need some balm, especially when they're interacting with people who are still hurting, people who are still sick, or people who are still crying in that darkness. They might be grown now, 36, 40 years old, 50 years old, but they might still be hurting. I can give you a personal testimony. When After I revealed what happened to me, I shared that like 2 weeks later with a coworker. And then that person opened up and told me, well, it happened to me when I was like 11 or 12 years old. But when I told my mom, she was like, well, that's just how your auntie shows her form of love. But to this day, this is some 30 some odd years later, he's just now getting some type of treatment for it because he didn't realize how broken it was and that he was stuck in that place for so long. I mean, so now that you know that people are sick and hurting, or now that you can see it and you can relate to it or have some compassion on it, how can we be the balm moving forward? And whether that's just a warm, consoling word, whether it's a hug, I guess, or whether it's just the tough love that some might need. I understand that you've been through some things, but let's get to the solution. Let's get to the meat of this. You're dealing with some heavy emotions. Where can we go from here? What can we do? Or just to recognize it and say, I see you and I understand your pain. Not sure what that bomb would look like in your experiences going forward to those in the chat and those in the restream. But when you need to be the bomb for someone, I think you'll be in a better position to be that with the understanding. So shout out to you, Brother George. Get dirty sometimes, man. Sometimes you got to get dirty. We can't talk nice when we have these type of issues, especially when we know what the future outcome should be. So salute.
Yeah, we got it, and it's going to be a lot more streams like this because I'm pressing the issue. I feel in my spirit that it's necessary for me to keep plowing through this issue because I want to create an avenue where brothers are going to be comfortable enough that we can get a think tank to start sending brothers to certain centers or certain things where brothers can get help because our black men, our black boys need help and they need to be protected. Come on in, Richie. Come on in, bless us.
Boy, I mean, the brothers have covered it really. You know, most of it, but again, we just gotta understand if we wanna. In our everyday lives, we're interacting with each other on different levels, and we all have traits, character traits that we exhibit in our everyday lives. And again, we got to start to have the knowledge of self that you don't do anything randomly. Behaviors are learned, behaviors are nurtured. You know, there's pre-programmed responses and behaviors that are given to you throughout society. We have to start examining this and really keeping this in the front of our heads when we're starting to deal with our leaders, when we're starting to deal with our family, our friends, because nobody's a standalone project. There's a reason for most things happening out here. There's a cause and effect. These are universal laws. So when we sit back and we look at our people as a whole and we start to analyze why we are not achieving certain things, why there's so much dysfunction when it comes to organizing big things and these kinds of things, we have to start to really look deeper into these situations of where our people are coming from. What is their family situation like? What traumas have they suffered through in their younger years? Because more than likely, these experiences that you go through when you are young impact upon you so much in your adult life. It's unbelievable. And that starts from the very mundane, small interactions that you may have as a child, all the way up until full-blown abusive situations, whether it be physical or sexual or mental. Yeah, so we got to keep this in mind. We got to know everything's connected. And maybe if we have that in our heads, when we deal with our people on a day-to-day basis, hopefully there will be a little bit more compassion in your heart. Hopefully you will be a little bit more sharper to the situation and to some of the statements that you're hearing out of your brother and sister's mouth when they're talking to you. So hopefully you can be more susceptible to picking up on your brother's pain and making a situation where it makes it a lot more comfortabler for that person to come out, speak to you, or seek help or solace in a situation that clearly a lot more of us have gone through than we like to talk about. So, on that premise, it's been a good show. Everybody, if you haven't liked the video, like the video. If you haven't shared the video, please go away and share the video. And if you're not subscribed to anyone who's been on the panel, please go away, have a look for us, go and support our channels. We're all of similar mind state. We're all trying to push our shows. Me and George are definitely trying to push the narrative on this abuse in the black community and PTSD situation, because as we said, it's a leading gateway to a lot of problems that we seem to be dealing with in the black community. And remember, this is a legacy killer. It's not just, it doesn't just affect one person. As George said, that black male can have 10 to 1,000 seeds a time, yeah, in many different women. So again, we don't address this properly. The problem is only going to multiply at a rapid rate, which it already is right now. So we're going to have to sit back. We're going to have to analyze. We're going to have to be patient. And we're going to have to show love to our brothers and sisters in order to address and deal with this problem properly. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. As always, big up George. Close up. Peace to the chat room and everybody who's contributed and who always tunes in for these types of shows, not just the hype shows, because these are foundation shows.
These are
nice one, George.
Yeah, these are the shows that really shows who the real subscribers are. You know, because you can have a lot of people talking about a lot of stuff, but people don't really want to deal with this type of conversation. I'm going to have more. It's going to be a lot more shows. I'm going to actually do another show where I'm going to bring some sisters on, and then we're going to mix. We're going to do the sisters, and then we're going to do the family, the dysfunction within the family. We got to have these type of conversations. So remember, I love my people more than they hate themselves. And I pray to the universal creator most high that these words be enough to inspire you. These words be enough to make you look at yourself in the mirror and make change. These words be enough to make you look at your children and know you have to make change. I hope this information was made you better than what you was before you came. I hope that when you leave here edified, and you leave here with some information that you can take back to your family and share. I hope that when you this information make you want to share it. Sit down and watch it with your sons. Please, mothers, brothers, fathers, sit down and watch it with your sons. Let's begin to have a conversation.
Wow, look at my screen.
That's how far I get. Let's begin to have the conversation. Let's begin to talk about it. Let's begin to tell who did what, so that this can't happen to other children. Be careful what you have your children watching. Monitor your children. Don't put work and having to pay the bills before the morale and the protection of your children. When you allow your children to get a hold of pornography at a young age, that child could easily go and exact that same behavior and the porn on other children within the household and outside the household. Be very careful what your children are exposed to. Be very careful with your time. Do not get so wrapped up in taking care of bills and doing things that you forget about your children. Be very protective of your daughters, but also be very, very protective of your sons. Understand the role that young black boy will have in society as he grows. Guide his steps, protect him, nurture him. Build him up to be the king that he's supposed to be, where he will be exhibiting pro-social behavior within society and not destructive behavior. Understand the importance of your sons, because we have evil entities out here that seeks to kill him or keep him in a position of being destructive. They keep the community in a position of destruction. Understand that we have open enemies that has declared war on black boys from the time they exit your wombs. Black woman, understand that we are at war, and the black man at times treats you in a very disrespectful manner because he is out of all sorts of what his role is as a man. He was born in dysfunction and he's behaving in dysfunction, and a dysfunctional man is very destructive to any society that he's placed in. So remember, I love y'all. I love y'all more than you can even imagine. I love black people. I'm super pro-black. Love your boys. Protect your sons. Know what his role is as a leader. And when you understand that, you would know what you have to do with your black boys. So remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.